Alright, I'm going to start getting this cabinet ready for paint. So what I've gone ahead and done so far is I've taken out the monitor, the marquee, the coin door here. I saved the T-molding for now because it was in decent shape, all things considered, but that's all gotten pulled off. There's nothing really left inside this cabinet other than a few miscellaneous parts that I was just using this cabinet for as storage. And there's the wiring, which I'm going to leave most of. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to start by peeling off the vinyl side art here. We're going to take a look and see if this comes off nice and easily. If not, we'll get out the heat gun and go from there. But there is that Avengers side art that was on this Tutankham cab. Let's go ahead and take a look. We got this guy here with the mace. These two dudes. They're going to take care of everything. They're going to save these women right here. There we go. So I've got a corner here that looks like it's already starting to come off. So we'll start here. And hopefully this comes off without much issue. And it's leaving residue, as I thought it might. You can clean that up quickly with some Goo Gone, and then, I mean, this cabinet's all going to get sanded out. I'd rather just not have this adhesive clogging up the sander if possible. It's like if I keep going and don't stop, I get a good pull there. Got some marks up there. I'm going to continue with this, and you guys get the idea. Pull, repeat, pull. That's how vinyl side art will come off. You could use a heat gun, which I might go get, and that'll just keep this from breaking. This artwork's almost 30 years old, so, or at least 30 years old. I think the Avengers was the 87, so yeah, right about 30 years old. So that could be why the vinyl is ripping like it is. If it's newer, it'll come all off in one sheet, but we'll heat it up and see if we can get it off. Alright guys, I got my heat gun here. This is the Harbor Freight special. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll heat this up, but if you guys ever need one of these, I think these are like $12, $15 at Harbor Freight, and it's cheap enough and it does the job. So I just like to go ahead and kind of heat up the area that I'm going to work on. And then once that's nice and warm, we'll go ahead and start pulling things up. I like to go down a little bit too, is where I'm going to be going, so when I get there, hopefully it's not too cold and just rips on me. Alright, let's see what we can do here. That works much better. Unfortunately, it's leaving the adhesive behind. But we'll take care of that. So I'm just going to keep going and heating this thing up, pulling, and we'll update you guys once this is all taken off. Okay, so that side graphic is off and you can see that. I want to show you a couple things though. So I was using the heat gun, and as I went around the outside, you can kind of see this is like the shiny part here. That's where the heat gun hit, and then up here where it's not shiny is where the heat gun didn't hit. I don't know if it just kind of like cleaned up some of the oxidization from the red paint, because red paint is known to do that. I thought it was kind of interesting there. The other thing that I did is I wasn't paying attention, and this must be latex paint. So I left this here in one spot for too long, and the paint actually started to come up, and that, what looks like brown here, is actually the original red underneath. So let me just show you what happens. So I mean, this paint's gonna get sanded down anyway. But let me just show you what happens if you spend too much time in one spot when you're using a heat gun on latex paint. So I don't know, we'll go somewhere over here. Now if there's vinyl, the vinyl actually will start to bubble up. But this is latex paint, I think. See, look at that. You see that starting to bubble right there? Right there. See that? It's bubbling. And that's what'll happen to your paint if you're there for too long. And it actually comes off. So that's what'll happen if you're putting latex paint down and you heat it up and you're there in one spot for too long. It'll actually start to bubble up. So very interesting. All right, guys, I'm gonna go back to peeling the other side. All right, guys, so I pulled off all of the side art off of this cabinet. Even wrote my name down here in heat gun. You see that says Tim. That's weird how that heat gun did that. It's like it shined up the red. Anyway, so the next thing I'm gonna go do is, I was debating whether I should strip this red paint off or if I should sand it. I think I'm gonna start with sanding, and we'll see how it goes, if I can get it smooth or not. If not, then I'll go ahead and maybe strip it, because that stripping is messy, time consuming, and you know, I'm always worried about residue left behind. But I do want to show you guys a few things. Now if you look here, this is a nail hole where they put nails in and filled it, and then they painted it. Now I think this is part of the original construction. There's a bunch more kind of in line. So like there's a piece of wood that runs like this here. So let's see, there should be one that kind of going up that way. So we follow that line. So there's one there, and then there's another one. Yep, so they're all starting to kind of poke through. So we'll sand that down, and if the wood filler pops out, we'll fill it back in. Right here you can actually see where the wood filler that they put in has come out. So we're gonna fill this area here. So one thing I like to do is just kind of go through and make sure I circle some of the bigger divots or smaller divots so that I can find them, and just things to kind of pay attention to when I'm filling, just to make sure I get them all. That's one thing you guys can do. I just kind of make sure that you get everything. You know, obviously we'll have to make sure that we're careful and we don't fill the serial number. We want to save that. Kind of come down here. It's like, here's another one right here, and that right there, and there's this area here, and then let's see, there's some stuff down here. So this needs to kind of get sanded out. Another nail actually poked through, so we'll hammer that back in. Some of these other ones here where they're starting to come out, I may actually just knock it out and hammer it back in and fill it. Let's see, another one over there. And then we gotta take care of that section in there with the, we'll see if we can glue some of that in or cut it out. We'll see how bad it is. And then obviously, you know, this corner here needs to be taken care of. So we'll just kind of go through the rest of this side and get the Bondo ready. And otherwise, this is not bad. There's nothing major here. Let's see, yeah, that too. All right, we'll go through and we'll take a look at the other side as well. But I won't film that. It's not very exciting. One thing I like to do is, if there's any spots like this where nails are starting to poke through and you can see it's cracked, is just kind of come in and I pop out that filler, because you know what? It's just going to come out anyway. I'd rather put in some new filler just so I know that it's not going to go anywhere. So we'll clean that out, and you see, sure enough, there's a nail right there. So now I've got a nice good thing for, you know, to put the Bondo into, and it'll actually hold, versus covering over it and then watching it come out again. Okay, so it's late at night and I'm working on this Tutankham cabinet here. I've done some Bondo work. I took care of that small section here. Actually, what happened is quite a bit of it broke off. So I put some of the pieces of wood back in, like this, glued them back in, and then I kind of did a skim coat of Bondo over it. It's going to need another coat over it, and then we'll sand that down. But I probably will sand in between, but I'll show you this. So I've soaked this in Goo Gone twice, and you guys can see that, all that adhesive that's still there. I've even tried sanding it off. I've even tried some acetone. It's driving me crazy. Goo Gone usually works. When I was in the industry of removing vinyl, we had some commercial grade stuff that actually worked a lot better. I can't remember the name of it though. But I mean, you can see these lines here. Those lines are where adhesive is not. And you can see where all the adhesive still is. What happens is it gums up the sandpaper though. I was hoping just to kind of sand right over it, but I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do next, but I'll let you guys know what I'll do. I'm not sure if I'm going to look for some other stuff or if I will just decide to strip the paint off of the entire side of the cabinet. We will see, but I'll let you know what we end up doing here. So here's that scrap piece that fell off. I put some paint stripper on it. We're going to see how it reacts. Now, the red paint that's on top is the original paint. I'm sorry, the original paint that was on the cabinet when I got it, but not that darker red that's underneath. So it's been on here for like a couple seconds, maybe 30 seconds, 60 seconds. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like underneath. I'm just worried about how much of a pain in the neck it's going to be. All right, so I've got my paint scraper here. Let's see. Well, so you can see the old red underneath, and you can see the coat of primer that they put on, and I think we can see some wood too. Well, I'm going to think about this. Maybe we'll do this to the entire cabinet, take off that red, and at least have a nice fresh start to work with. When you put this stuff on, this paint stripper, it takes forever to clean up, which is fine when I'm doing something on a vinyl side, but wood, I don't know. We'll see. All right, so I've gone ahead and done some quick Bondo repair, but the adhesive that's right there for the old side art, it's like the worst adhesive I've ever seen. So I had actually gone ahead and I stripped the other side of all the old red paint and got back down to the original paint, and I'll have a nice smooth surface to work with, which is probably what I should have done to begin with. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some paint stripper on, and you guys can kind of see how I do that and how it comes up. And any of the Bondo, if it comes undone, we'll just repair it down the road anyway. But this adhesive is like the worst stuff. I would spend more time trying to remove that adhesive than I would actually just stripping the entire side of the cabinet with paint stripper. All right, so let's go ahead and get that set up. For paint stripper, this is what I've been using lately. It's kind of like Citrus Strip, but a little bit cheaper, and maybe a little bit harsher. And this is like the newer can. It's just been rebranded. This stuff works all right. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll just kind of dump it on, spread it around. I use an old brush I don't really care about, and if you try using a foam brush, which I've done before, the foam brush will just eventually deteriorate on you. So let's go ahead and pour this stuff on. So we applied the paint stripper everywhere. It's been maybe a total lapse time of about 10 minutes. That includes, you know, when we started putting it on. You guys saw it as it got fast forwarded because, let's be serious, there'd be a lot of boringness to watch. But as you can see, it just starts to wrinkle right up. And, you know, I'm not worried about Bondo. Some of that Bondo is going to come up and we'll just fix it afterwards, which will be fine. But the Bondo that actually is, you know, adhering to bare wood will stay, is generally what it does. Because if the other Bondo's on top of paint, that will obviously come up with the paint. But just to kind of give you an idea of how easy this stuff comes up. So, you know, I just use a plastic paint stripper right here and kind of come up and you just scrape away. It just comes right up like that. What you're seeing here, so that gray is primer from underneath the red paint, and then this darker brown looking thing on the, probably on the screen, which is actually the old Tutankham red. So if I scrape where this brown is, red comes up. But there you go. I'm gonna go to town scraping this thing and we'll go from there. Look at that lovely pile of paint. So this is what it looks like after one round of paint stripper. And you guys saw that last section fast forwarded. The total lapse time on that was less than 10 minutes. It's like maybe 8 minutes or so. So what I do is after I've gone through and I stripped it and I've gotten most of it off, you know, I have to go back and get things like the edges and whatnot just because I don't lay it on as thick on the edges, so I don't want it running over the side. But I go through, I'll clean up this lovely mess right here, and then I will put another coat on, and we will, that usually does it, and then in which case this will be then ready to get sanded. But there you go. That was maybe, you know, 20 to 30 minutes worth of work, and you end up with a nice clean surface in the end. And then what we can do is you can actually see where we need to fill with the Bondo. Alright guys, I'm going to go back and do another round. I'm not going to film that because it's really boring. Alright, here is the cabinet after the second application of that paint stripper. As you can see, there's that red underneath, and we even see some wood, and there's a big pile of slop. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up, and then it's ready to be sanded on both sides, and then some quick body work again, and get this thing ready for paint. So the cabinet has been stripped of that Avengers red on both sides, and we're down to a nice smooth finish here. And this is some of the original red that was from Tutankham, and that's what we're going to be going back to. But you know, it needs to be repainted. We've got some body work to take care of and some sanding to do, so it'll be nice and smooth for when we do paint. But if you're trying to figure out how to color match the paint, and I think I'm gonna go get some paint tomorrow, one thing you can do is you look for overspray on parts that are accessible or removable. Sometimes things like control panel brackets have overspray on them. In this case, these don't, but you guys can see that there's overspray on this. And you just like to look for a spot that you can clean up pretty well. Luckily, on the back of this cabinet, let's spin this thing around. The back of this cabinet actually has the original red. You guys look up here, there's some of the original red, and I'm looking for things that are easily removable, and lo and behold, this handle here is removable. So all I do is just unbolt it, and we'll go ahead and we'll take this into the hardware store and have them color match that paint and finish. Get it off, there we go. So here's the red that we're going to be matching. And you can see that's what it is on the sides there. And it was that red underneath, but it's definitely not the bright red. If you guys look, there's a fleck of the bright red that they had painted this. But so we'll go ahead and we'll take this in. I cleaned this up the best I could, and we'll have them color match this shade of red for the Tutankham so that we can have a nice original looking finish when we're all done. So that's how you find yourself the color you need if it's out there, if you have a part. And hopefully you do have a thing that you can pull off to color match, and that's not always the case, but there are some color codes out there. Sometimes the color codes need to be double checked, but that's one thing you can do. But there you go. You can actually see that when they sprayed this cabinet, they did it with this piece on. I mean, these were put together pretty quick as far as, you know, get them out the door. But good to see. All right, guys, I'm gonna go get that color matched. So I went over to the local hardware store and picked up a can of paint, had them color match it to this back handle here. And this time I'm going to try using the porch and floor paint. It's a satin finish, and I was talking to them about it, and they said this is a little more durable than maybe a wall paint, but it'll still do the job. Now, in my state, I cannot get custom mixed oil paint. You know, I can get some Rust-Oleum stuff, and you know, whatever it is what it is. So I'm stuck painting with latex, but I've had good luck so far, and you know what, it's gonna be the way of the future anyway. So we'll give this a shot and see how it comes out as far as durability and sprayability and all that fun stuff. But so I actually had them put on the piece over here the paint. So let's see if we can, you know, take a look at it. So here's the board, and then right here, where it looks nice and clean, that's the new paint. So that actually matched really well. And then there's that little red fleck right there. That was the red that was on there to begin with. So I think this is going to come out really nice. It looks like a really good match. I'm happy with it. And then as far as what the paint code is, so you guys can see it, let's see here, turn this upside down. So there it is, E167, F254, KX is 45, RR1Y303, whatever that means. I don't know. But there you go. That is the code for this. So if you have an Ace Hardware store near you, you can at least get it matched to that. But if anybody ever wants, you know, me to send them something, just drop me a line and we'll work something out as far as the paint, so you can get it custom matched wherever you are. So there we go. We'll give this a shot, and there is the custom matched paint. So here is one side sanded with 100 grit and then 120 grit. I've gone ahead, it's nice and smooth now. I've got a little bit of Bondo work to just kind of patch up down here. It's not as thick as it might look. That's where that chunk of wood was. So some of that's actually pretty thin. So we'll just do another quick skim coat over that. Same with that. And then just a couple quick patches on any of the holes here. But as you can tell, this is looking pretty good. I'll do another sand after we finish with the Bondo. I've also sanded the front here as well. So we're making progress. I was reading the back of the paint can here, trying to determine if this is one of those paint and primer in ones. It's not, so this is, but it does have instructions regarding priming. It actually says, and you guys probably won't be able to see this, but so for surface preparation, it says we need to just thin it and actually prime it with this. So it gets thinned anyway when we spray it, so we'll spray it and see how it takes and then keep going from there. But we'll actually be priming with this. Maybe that's because it's designed for floors and they actually want that as the adhesive. I don't really know. But anyway, I'm going to keep sanding. Sand the other side and we'll go from there. Okay, so we're done sanding both sides and the front. The back's gonna get left alone just as a little, you know, time capsule as to where this cabinet has come from. But here we go. So both sides have been sanded and then hand sanded with a block sander to be nice and smooth. All the Bondo work's been done. You can't even tell that these bumps are here, or they're not bumps, they're the original nail holes. So some of them didn't need to be filled, some did. And one other thing that we will do is just kind of make sure that that serial number is still visible. So we've got this front sanded, and then, you know, you guys know how to sand, but the last thing I do is I just use the hand sander with a block, make sure everything's nice and smooth. It gives me a chance to get it one last look over. But here you go, here's the other side with all the Bondo work done. I don't know if you remember that big section that was missing or had come off. That's been repaired. That was down here, and that's now nice and smooth as well. And it's looking pretty good. I'm excited to actually paint a wooden cabinet versus a melamine cabinet. But let me set the camera up, and we're gonna go through and we're just gonna make sure that this serial number up here is still visible when we paint it. So let me show you how I take care of that. So one thing I'd like to show you real quick is where the serial number is, and when you sand this, what happens is eventually it'll start to disappear just because you're sanding wood and, you know, it's not as indented as it was and there's junk in there. So one thing I like to do is just take a sharp point. This is actually a soldering iron point for a soldering iron I don't use. And I just kind of come in here and I go through and clean out all the stuff that's in there. And that way, and you can kind of push down a little bit and make sure, you know, you're tracing in those numbers so that they're visible still. I think that's kind of important to still have that 8952 serial number there, just, you know, as a point of reference. And that, it keeps it authentic. And there's another spot on the front that had the serial number as well, so I'm going to go through and I'll, you know, trace that as well with this sharp point. But that's all I do is I just kind of go through and I clean it out and make sure it's nice and visible and you can feel it when you run your thumb over it. But there you go. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to clean this cabinet, vacuum it, wipe it off with a tack cloth, make sure it's free of any sort of dust, and then we'll start masking it off. So there you go. That is the Tutankham cab. It's all ready for paint now, which is super exciting. Can't wait to actually get this paint on here and have this cabinet looking like it did back in the day. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this section. The next section will be paint.